There once was an old traveler set upon his journey, but before he left, he packed a loaf of bread, a chunk of cheese, and a sausage for his dinner that night. And he walked, and he walked, and he walked. He walked until the night sent chills to his bones. And then he knew that it was time for him to find a place to spend the night. And he saw a large, well-lit house on the top of the hill. That looks like an interesting place to spend the night. And he knocked on the door. And an old woman opened the door with a long face and a long nose, with all the meanness stuck in the tip of her nose. And she said, "What do you want?" "I'm an old traveler, looking for a place to spend the night. Maybe even your tool shed or your barn." "No, you can't spend the night here. Go away." And he turned around and he began to walk away. What else was he to do when the rich woman was chasing him away? And he walked down the hill. And in the very bottom of the hill, there was a small, humble-looking home. And out of that home, he could hear laughter and children singing. That doesn't look like a home of wealth, but it looks like a home of love. This is where I should spend my night. And he walked down that hill, and he knocked on the door. And a little boy of about 13 opened the door. "Grandfather, how can I help you?" "I'm an old traveler, looking for a place to spend the night. Maybe even your tool shed or your barn." "Oh, you can't spend the night in the barn? That's nonsense, Grandfather. You come on inside. You can spend the night in my house." And when he walked inside, the little boy took his coat and he hung it. And he watched. They didn't have much in that house. Just a wooden table with some rockety chairs. And the mother was sitting at the table with her children around her. "How can we help you? Are you hungry? Cold oatmeal is all we have." "Cold oatmeal for dinner? No, thank you. I've already eaten." And he looked at the children, the youngest with his clothes a little bit too large for him, and the eldest with his clothes a little too small. They were clean, but small. "Listen, I've already eaten, but I brought some dinner for you." And he handed his sausage and his cheese and his bread to the woman. And oh, how the children's eyes glowed at the sight of the food as they took the bread and began to slice large chunks of that bread, splattering cheese on top and sausages, frying up those sausages. And as they fried up the sausages, he looked at the mother and he asked, "How did you get to be this way?" "Oh, we weren't always this way. We used to own that house at the top of the hill. My husband was a farmer, but then he got into a farming accident and he died. And then one of the children fell ill, and we had to sell our land and then our home, and then we had to move to this house at the bottom of the hill. I used to be a seamstress, but now I don't even have enough cloth to make clothes for my own children." And they talked all through the night. And as they talked, the children fried up their sausages and ate and rejoiced. And when midnight strikes, when it was midnight, he said, "Well, I guess it's time for me to retire for the night." And he took his mattress and he rolled it down on the ground. "Grandfather, no," said the same little boy who let him in. "You're not sleeping on the ground. I will sleep on the ground. You go and sleep in my bed." "Why, I wouldn't be able to sleep a wink knowing that you had slept on the ground. And so the little boy slept on the ground, and the old man slept in the little boy's bed, with sheets hanging from each bed of the children for a little bit of privacy. And in the morning, he awoke to the smell of sausages from the previous night. He ate his breakfast. He drank some tea. And then he said, "Well, I guess I better be off on my way." And the mother walked him out. "Thank you for visiting us." And he looked at her deep inside of her eyes and said, "I have a gift for you." "A gift? We weren't hospitable to you just to get a gift." "I know. Otherwise you wouldn't be getting one. Whatever you do first thing today, you will do all day." And then he left. And the mother watched him walk away. And then she turned around and walked back inside her house, shaking her head. What an unusual fella. And as she walked inside, she already had forgotten what the old man had said. But she thought, today will be the day that I make clothes for my children, even if I only have enough thread to make a handkerchief for the youngest. And she took the box with the cloth, and she reached inside, and she pulled, and she pulled, and she pulled. Only it wasn't a small piece of cloth, but a large piece of silk, and then velvet, as it turned into cotton, as it turned into wool, as she pulled, and it was pink and blue and green and white as she pulled, and she pulled, and she pulled, and she pulled. And the children jumped on the table, and they were diving inside of the cloth as she pulled, and she pulled, and she looked at the youngest and said, "Go to the rich woman's house on the top of the hill and borrow some measuring tape, for I am making clothes today." And the little boy ran to the top of the hill, and he knocked on the door of the same rich woman on the top of the hill, and she opened the door. "What do you want?" "My mother wants to borrow some measuring tape. She's making clothes today." "Your mother can't afford to make clothes. Go away." And the little boy told the woman all about the visitor they had and the gift that he left behind. "That should have been my gift." And she quickly handed the measuring tape to the boy. And she sent her servants to go and find that old man and bring him back to spend the night at her house. The old traveler was already almost at the next town when they caught up to him. "Grandfather, you have to come back with us. You need to spend the night in the rich woman's house. She has invited you to spend the night." "But her house is that way. I'm going this way." "Please, grandfather, please come with us. If you don't come with us, she may fire us." All right, I'll come with you." And as they walked, the mother pulled out one last piece of thread. And now the entire house was filled with cloth. She not only had enough cloth to make clothes for her children, but she had enough cloth to live on for the rest of her days if she sells it. And they arrived at the rich woman's house. There was a large table full of food. There was meat, and there was rice and potatoes and desserts. And he ate. And then she brought him to the bedroom. There was a large bed with a feather cover, and he slept so comfortably that night. And then he went and he ate again, And then he slept again, and then he visited the library, and there were so many books that she owned, none of which she read, but she owned them. And he read some books, and then he ate, and then he slept, and then he read, and then he ate, and he slept, and he read, and ate, and slept, and read, and ate, and slept. And he did this for 3 days. And for those 3 days, the old man watched the rich woman. He watched her as she yelled at her servants. He watched her as she kicked her dogs. He watched her as she waited impatiently for him to leave. And on the 3rd day, he said, "Well, I guess it's time for me to go. Does this mean that I get my gift?" And the old man looked at her with a smile that was both knowing and sad. And he said, "Whatever you do the first thing today, you will do all day." And then he left. And before the door was even closed, the woman rushed up the stairs, for she had it all planned. She was going to go up the stairs, she was going to take her treasure of gold, and she will start counting all the coins. And by the end of the day, she will have so many coins. And she took that box down, and there was a film of dust on the box. And she, achoo! She sneezed, and the cow stopped giving milk, and she sneezed, and the chicken stopped giving eggs, and she sneezed, and the dogs ran away in the woods, and she sneezed, and the servants put their hands on their ears, and they ran back home as she sneezed, and she sneezed, and she sneezed, and she sneezed, and the windows burst, and the walls fell down as she gave out one last sneeze. Achoo! And the rich woman sat in the rubbles of what was once a fine, fine home. And the lesson was not wasted on her.